and welcome to this episode of the broadcast. I am your host, David Brooks, Head of Policy here at Broadstone, and I'm excited. We're going to have a slightly different sort of podcast, it feels, today, and that might just be based on the pre-chat, which I won't, in case some of it comes up again, but I won't. But it's a little bit different than the usual, getting into the regulatory technicalities of pension. We're going to talk a bit more about financial technology systems and how they interact with the pensions world. And I'm really delighted to be joined by Gareth Stears, who is Business Development Manager from Aries Insight. And I'm also joined by Ian. Hi, Gareth. Sorry, I was in a flow then.
I didn't know I
was
wasn't
also
supposed
joined
to cut
by
in.
Ian Beestin, who is the co-founder and director of SCX Technologies. Hello to you both.
Good afternoon, David. Good afternoon, Gareth.
Right, before we get into the meat of it, we feel like we need to talk about how you two know each other, and I'm intrigued whether you're both going to know each other
email,
from the same
and I
place.
think we've got different answers. So I remember me and Ian got talking at Passa Summer Drinks, and I think that's where we first met in person. Maybe I just interpreted the question differently, because I think I'd seen you were a drummer for a Stranglers tribute band, and I love the Stranglers, so I think that was my in. And in that sort of awkward networking kind of event thing, I thought, well, I can definitely just come up to Ian and talk about the Stranglers. So that was my memory, but you had something different, I think.
Yeah, I remember you from Twitter back in the day when it was good, and I think it was during COVID times. And I mean, you're going to feel blush now, but you came over as very erudite, informed, and quite an original thinker. So I enjoyed your tweets, and I think we first met in real life, or IRL, as young people call it. I think it was a Passa conference, and then I quickly realised that all the impressions I'd got from Twitter were no, they weren't wrong. No. No, they're absolutely right, and I just got interested in what you did and what Aries Insights did. So, and we've known each other ever since, really.
Oh, well, that's very kind. No, I do seem to remember vaguely now that you were one of the good people on Twitter, as I still call it, to be honest. And it was a great pleasure to meet you in IRL, I should say. And we've been going strong ever since. Always keep an eye out for guest lists at conferences.
So in summary, Dave, Gareth is erudite and informed, and I play drums in a Stranglers tribute band.
Yeah. Well, I'm even more excited about the podcast when you were saying that. I was thinking, right, this erudite Gareth we've got in, this is going to be absolute gold the whole way through.
Yeah, that might just be in writing when I have time to think about it. You're going to see how I flounder when I have to verbally communicate. But we'll see.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you how I know each of you now, and I hadn't really thought about this until you were talking. Well, Gareth, I know you because we use Aries Insight Systems, and we'd have engaged. But I have been a long follower and admirer of you as well. Your work, because I've seen you in video, appealing for volunteers for the Pensions Ombudsman and things like that. So you're not a stranger to multimedia type things like this. So yeah, a long admirer as well. And Ian, well, it's almost legendary how we know each other, because you put it in print in Pensions Age not a couple of months ago about how over X Twitter we recognise each other as musicians of varying qualities. Me, a bass player at the lower end, Ian, a drummer at the top. And then you invited me to join a band with you, which was incredibly flattering. That was incredible.
To cut a long story short, we needed a bass player to play at an industry band competition called Sustainability Rocks. Our bass player couldn't do it at relatively short notice. So I remembered Dave from our Twitter conversations, got him in. He came on stage at the 100 Club in Oxford Street, a sold-out gig, as calm as you can imagine, and we won the competition. So we have a winning start to playing the music together.
I didn't realise you'd won as well. I did see that story in Pensions Age. Yeah, it's a great story, and the fact you won as well. Someone make the film.
Yeah, it's almost like a film. It probably is being made.
I'm sure it must be. There's no way they're not. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Well, sorry, we will get onto the tech in a minute, but I did wanted to say I wasn't calm because Ian actually had to give me one of his famous breathing technique pep talks as I was having I went into a bit of a spiral of nerves at one point. So yeah, what happens on stage, mate, is like the old duck analogy. There's usually something going like the clappers, trying to keep everything going together.
You played brilliantly, Dave.
As did you. It was great fun, and I'm looking forward to doing it again, hopefully in a couple of months again.
Fingers
And
crossed.
we guys need to think about casting if we are going to do the film, but we might have to. Well, we do have to move on, so we'll come back to that another time. Okay, so we've got to know each other a little bit. So I want you just to introduce Gareth. I'm going to come to you first, just to if we're going to talk about fintech businesses. I know that's probably a loose phrase, and you may recoil from it. I don't know if you embrace that fintech phrase. It'd be interesting to get your thought on it. But what Aries Insight does, some of your core propositions.
So in terms of fintech, I don't tend to see us that way, but I mean, I guess we technically we are. It's technology in the financial services that's solving problems. In a nutshell, Aries Insight is about trying to make pensions legislation a bit easier for the people who have to comply with it. So we have what we call our knowledge base. So as I say, we've been going since the 80s, and that whole time we've been writing up guidance and trying to put legislation into as plain English as possible. Another subject we'll come back to, actually. And other things we do, we try and facilitate networking. So, sometimes we might not have an answer to your question, but because we have clients from all over the industry, we try and provide ways for people to get in contact with each other, and find more practical answers that way. Because we don't actually administer pensions ourselves. We don't do any governance. We just exist for our members, who are people who work in the industry. That's probably like a good start, I suppose.
Thank you. Yeah, Ian. So yeah, it's really just an introduction to what FCX Technologies does, perhaps a bit of the journey, because I know you've probably been on a little bit of a journey recently, and you've had a change in name. So a bit about what your core propositions are, what you sort of things you do, and things you'd like to get involved with.
Yeah. Okay. Well, FCX Technologies we did change our name from Money Alive fairly recently, really to reflect our journey as a company to becoming a technology solution that's used quite widely now in the pensions industry. And kind of probably proudest stat about that is that there are now over 1 million scheme members who can access information about their pension via a video canvas experience. And Video Canvas is the product that we market to the pensions industry. It was kind of built from the ground up for financial services, but in a nutshell, it's a personalized interactive video experience, which research suggests and our experience and our customers' experience suggests cuts through really, really well with a lot of scheme members who find it harder to engage with traditional forms of communication. There was last week, I'm sure you both read the PPI's piece about guided retirement, and one thing that really leapt out to me, I've just made a note of it, there's a correlation with wealth and engagement, and lower earners and smaller pots are significantly less likely to engage with their pensions, and these are really, really important people. Particularly as we've seen, the proliferation of auto-enrollment DC and DC pensions, where engagement with your pensions is arguably more important, particularly towards the end of your time as an accumulator. And what we do at the company is we help firms research, design, build, and distribute their personalized video experiences. We've got what we call a hyper-personalised player, where every sentence can be generated around the individual's data, and this makes it extraordinarily powerful in terms of serving up things that are relevant to people at the kind of level that they need it to be at, so we can create communications that can adopt to different personas, based on perhaps their age or their wealth, or whether or not they filled in an expression of wish form, so we can talk to someone differently. So that's one of my favorite examples of the industry communicating badly. A sentence like, if you've not completed an expression of wish form, it's quite a complicated thing to unpack. So you better kind of personalizing communications. So if they have completed an expression of wish form, you can say, great news, you've done that, you've recognized it's important to keep it up to date, do you want to do that? And if they haven't, you'd start by explaining that in the event of you dying before you take your pension, it's really important that we know what to do with the money, and introduce it that way. So that's kind of what we're all about, really. Researching and then creating these hyper-personalized experiences for members. Gareth has his hand up.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, this is why I didn't want to sort of call Aries, or sort of, I felt uncomfortable saying that we're sort of a fintech, because I do, when you compare the sort of the amazing sort of videos that Ian's company produces, which I have seen examples of, it's really great stuff, and it's really exciting that these tools are now available for, trying to help people comprehend pensions. Because let's be honest, we've been in the industry a long time, and even now some of it's bewildering. So you do need these tools. Whereas I was sort of reflecting on this before our call, and I think in the case of Aries, we're communicating with people in the industry already. So the tools we have are essentially, it's a website, but the complexity, I suppose, in the service comes from our organization of the material, rather than presenting it in a more engaging way, which I think Ian's company does absolutely fantastically.
I think that's interesting. I mean, it's not that information isn't available, it's actually available. There's massive amounts of information available. It's kind of understanding that for a lot of people that can be quite intimidating, and to help them work through what is important in a step-by-step way is a massive value add. I had a friend who was a financial advisor, and he used to say, he had this great expression, which was, the large print giveth, the small print taketh away, which I really, really loved that. And what we do is churn out a lot of small print. So it's not that we're trying to promise things, it's just that we usually respond to a change in regulation, a change in some circumstance, a change in rule, by churning out more stuff, rather than thinking about how that might land with someone who doesn't, work in pensions, like you say. It's a bit, I don't know, it's like going to a library. If someone wants a specific book on something, it's good to help them identify which is the book for their needs. That's what a librarian would do. Whereas at the moment, it feels a bit like you say, it's in the library, there you go. And I know one of our customers, for example, sends out a questionnaire that someone needs to fill in. And after doing a lot of work, they've got it down from 60 pages to 38 pages, but they still find very low engagement with it. So in that circumstance, what we did is we created a video guide to the form, which actually echoes the single source of truth that kind of populates the form, also populates the video. So you get that really good resonance between the two. But the video's able to reinforce points like, if you don't fill this in, you won't get your pension, which can be quite lost in a massive document. And it also stresses the kind of resources that are available to help people fill the form in as well, which again can be quite lost if you just get a bundle of paperwork. I think we've done research that says a lot of pensions communication ends up in the drawer unopened. So that's kind of what we're all about, really, trying to get people, interrupt that. Yeah. So I think we have quite a lot in common, don't we, in terms of making complexity accessible, and doing the hard work, albeit for different cohorts of people, to make it as easy as possible for people to understand things.
Yeah, that's it. It's the different cohorts thing, I think, is quite interesting, because it's a similar challenge, and it's definitely got some similarities, but there are just some differences as well, which I think might be interesting to talk about.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing because the key difference. I mean, it's very interesting hearing you both talking actually because I see myself as a user in both in a way. I've never actually
Mm,
used Ian's services, but I'm a member of a pension scheme and I get the wedges of paper and the big documents that sort of that Ian's alluding to. But I'm also a receiver of the information that Gareth and then his team produce to help me understand as a role as I'm a technical expert in pensions and I answer questions and research regulation all the time. And using Aries is integral to that. But it can be in two different guises and in two different situations. But you're both trying to make the incomprehensible comprehensible in a way that's useful to me at that point. When I'm dealing with Aries, I'm trying to work out disclosure deadlines, regulatory requirements, technical calculations, and with Ian, it's when do I got to send this back by? When do when do I want to retire? How much do I need to live off? All these sorts of things. I think it's really
mm,
interesting how you're both sort of coming at effectively a similar set of facts. If we think about the pensions universe that's around us and that ecosystem, and those different audiences, I just think it's interesting. And I suppose Ian's journey has gone from I suppose keying off from the paper statement into something a bit more sophisticated, and Aries is going from well, that's the regulations, good luck, into something a bit more palatable. And obviously, it's harder to put that into video, and so text is the way. But there are so many similarities into the way in what you're trying to do, and it's interesting that you're both doing that very differently.
mm.
Um,
I think that difference though is because who our customer is.
hmm,
Ultimately, our customer could be a pension scheme or a pension provider or an asset manager or a network of financial advisors, but there is a consumer at the end of the communication, and that's what we focus on, help them be effective in that communication piece. So a big thing for us, for example, is that a consumer, whilst your professionals are very happy to read, and that's the normal way that they would consume information, consumers learn things in lots of different ways. So, speech, so listening is quite a powerful way of communicating with people. Visual cues, so using agreeable imagery that reinforce points. But I think the killer breakthrough for us was back 4 years ago when we launched personalized video that includes data unique to the recipient. And that's when you're kind of really talking about them, talking about their pension pot, their tax-free cash option, their residual monthly income or annual income, what might happen if they took a larger tax-free cash, all those kind of things where they're looking at one thing against another. We're looking at pie communication as well. And my first experience of pie communication was a colleague of mine who's a pensions expert. His dad had received a prospectus about a pie exercise, and it was 98 pages long. And talk about the woods, the trees getting lost in the woods. And so we're currently looking at one where you can get concepts of like when the crossover is for that individual, rather than as a sort of hypothetical saying at some point you'll be better off. You can say you financially will be better off at this point. This is where your crossover is. This is the amount of money that's involved. So you're not giving them a kind of like, if it was £100,000, for example, this is what the income increase would be. If you speak specifically about their numbers, you're going to find it's going to resonate a lot more with the person who gets it. The other thing about using visual speech is you can also think about accessibility, which might not be something that's as important for you, Gareth, but we have to think about vulnerable customers, and so we've kind of built a bespoke version of our communications that allow the recipient to have certain agency over certain things, like the size of the character, what sort of font it is, whether they want images on and off, and that will work with a screen reader. Now that's very different to sending something in the post. So we offer this kind of additional communication options, and these are really, really important for the end user, but there is a regulatory angle there as well in terms of, people thinking about vulnerability. So it's quite different.
Yeah, Gareth, I was going to key
Yeah.
off that really, and I was thinking about so Ian's sort of talking about his audience and the unique challenges that they present. You have a different audience, people like me, nerds like me. Some not all nerds. Some of them will be nerds. But how do Aries? How are you thinking about your audience, the unique challenges they have, and the demands they have to make sure you're meeting meeting them, how do you adapt? How do you, and it's not that in adapting for vulnerability necessarily, it's adapting for just slightly different people and different needs at different times. How do you think about that?
Yeah, quite a lot of nerds, to be honest. But
No,
yeah, I think
no offense intended, Dave.
No offense intended at all. No, all meant.
um,
Yeah, all taken.
yeah, I mean, I think that quite often the needs are different. So people are coming to the Aries website not to read everything there is to read about statutory transfers, because that would take hours and hours of dense reading, and that assumes starting from zero. So actually, what our guidance is really just to try and find as quickly as possible, probably one or two very specific bits of information. And then that's why it's in text form. If it was a video, that would be a lot of scrolling, stopping, rewinding. So, it is kind of solving a different need. The audience, quite obviously, is people who work in pensions. And we also tend to say as well, ideally you would have had a few years under your belt before you start going into Aries and looking for answers as well, because, you know, especially very early in your career, it's very easy to think the right answer, but realize you've missed something quite fundamental, something that really just comes with experience. I mean, the challenge that probably we have in common, I suppose, is how much information to include and what you can, for the sake of comprehension, keep out of it. So, I mean, our guidance will have everything in, basically every possible exclusion from the norm. We kind of have to list in there. But when you're trying to do, we do like digests as well monthly, and that's where you see the similarity, where if you do include everything and you say here's a long list of exclusions, then it just becomes incredibly dense and impossible to read. There's also the jargon problem. So for us, we will allow ourselves a certain amount of jargon because we know our audience will know what GMP means, for example. For most purposes, they know the difference between DB and DC, and you can even use the acronym, and people are comprehending it. But
no, I think you've got it. I mean, I'd be interested as well from an Aries perspective, how you monitor usage and people using it, and are there hotspots on your website that right, this bit is obviously keenly interested to lots of people, but this is really niche, and anyone ever looks in here, and how you react, almost like reacting to the needs of the industry. I know actually your colleague Judith's been trying to call me all week to try to talk to her about. I think she wants some feedback from me, and I've just been very busy and haven't got back to her. And that is a good part of the feedback loop. But how you react to change in the industry and changes in practice. Like for instance, I think like in your news pages, you feel like you've expanded that over the recent years at least to give that running commentary rather than waiting for the regs to be passed or whatever else. You are commenting and giving more commentary on sort of the softer side, the application side, rather than this is what the regulations say, and we'll leave it to you. You seem a bit more engaged in that side of things.
Yeah, that you're definitely right. We have expanded that, and that was based on feedback, and we try and provide more commentary, like you say, sort of talk more about the development of a story. So we have guidance once legislation's in force, but obviously there's a bit of a journey it goes on before it becomes settled legislation. And I think we've got we're doing a little bit more in the early stages of that. So, there might be, there might be, a PPI paper on a subject with some policy suggestions. This might turn into a white paper from the government that we report on. And then it's a green paper. I think I've got that the right way around, and a consultation, and then ultimately primary legislation and then secondary legislation. So there's a real long journey that these things go on. And yeah, we are much better at sort of reporting every step along the way. In terms of your point on, what pages people visit the most, we have that a little bit. We get asked a lot of questions, what we call technical questions, and they can be real sort of tricky, difficult to resolve situations that people find themselves into, and that's actually one of our most popular things that we do now, just because it's such a nightmare when they do arise. So we have a bit of an idea about how many sorts of how many questions we get on different subjects, but actually you don't want to lose sight of those really niche things, because one of the most useful things in the world is when there's absolutely no information on something, and then you find just that little bit of information that's just sort of hidden in one corner of the Aries website.
Yeah. If I can pick up on the point about what you were asking, Gareth, about what people's behavior is, we as a sort of B2C communication provider, we serve two audiences. So we've already talked about the benefit of member understanding and comprehension, but through our software development kit, which is how we get the data into the members' web browser experience, we also collect significant amount of analytics. The player creates events, and via the SDK, software development kit, this will go back to our customer's dashboard. So particularly if they're FCA regulated, where there's an unambiguous you need to evidence consumer understanding, we include a recap game as part of our experience. And this was initially brought in based on research, which says that viewers like interactivity. They like to get involved. So very, very different to reading a PDF. So what we tend to end a video canvas with is a kind of recap game. And we'll say to our customers, what are the 3, 4, or 5 key points that you want them to take away? And we'll turn that into a game. And if they get the answer right, they get congratulated. And who doesn't love being congratulated? and if they get it wrong, they can either just be given the answer, or they can be taken back to the point in the video where that topic was covered. So it's kind of fun. But from my point of view as a communicator, I'm getting multiple bites of the cherry in terms of wanting to get this information over. Because when they're watching and listening, it's a passive thing. But when they're doing the recap, it's active. So they're enjoying it, but our customer is getting this incredible evidence, as they do when the customer clicks on the next steps. Because I can't think of a video canvas that doesn't have a purpose in terms of what do you want the member to do next after they've done this? I want them to download their full statement. I want them to book a meeting. I want them to use our help desk, or I want them to complete an expression of wish form, whatever that might be. But we're collecting data and saying, this percentage of people, click the play button. This number of people successfully did the recap. This number of people successfully completed, the whole journey and clicked on the next steps. What's really interesting about our product is we are not a data processor. So actually, we're not privy to any of the member data, and nor are we privy to any of the analytics. And this is one of the reasons why we are a popular solution in financial services, because we stay out of that. It's been designed that we're not a data processor, but we can give great information to our customers about what their members are doing and what their members know. Very valuable from a regulatory point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so time is moving on. So I want to ask you a question about AI, which I just couldn't. I mean, I'm a complete. I don't know what the word is. I'm not great at AI. I don't really understand it. I use it a little bit. Just kind of very basic, basically. But Gareth, I'll come to you and just say, well, how is AI being introduced in your thinking and planning, and whether it affects the way you do things?
Well, I'll talk more as a firm. I'm not sort of using it myself in any sort of interesting ways in my sort of general business development. But I know that our techies have, from time to time, we'll put one of the more difficult kind of legislation questions into AI to see what it spits out. I think it's interesting that, I mean, it kind of does what you expect it to do if you know anything about AI, which is comes up with a plausible answer with lots of, some bits that are good and quite impressive, but almost always there's one lie in there, almost like sort of two truths and a lie. So it is quite good as a sort of a first draft, and it's easier to critique than create. So you can kind of get an initial answer, but then you're still having to go out and do the hard yards and getting to the correct answer. And I think it's a point people have made before, but you do worry about people using this and relying on it to any degree. You know, especially making sort of financial decisions, you know, making compliance decisions, thinking you can sort of do away with, you know, real technical research, I think is very dangerous. Supposedly it's getting better all the time, but you know, I think there's always going to be that risk in there that you're going to be saying something plausible and incorrect. But yeah, that's my view in terms of how it interacts with Aries' sort of pensions technical niche, if you like.
If I can pick up on Gareth's point, particularly relating to fear, I call it the Wild West of LLMs, really large language models, that people are actively putting financial documentation, photographs of things into these LLMs. This is going on without the scheme having a clue that it's going on, and they have no idea what the person's doing, what they're being told, what they're being exposed to. We would argue the solution is to stop them doing that, give them great communication experiences yourself, so they don't feel the need to do that. So you're in control, so you know what they are being fed, and you can dictate using your expertise what is important and what isn't important. Because obviously people in the industry has wisdom and can be much more helpful in terms of directing people. We did some interesting research on a video canvas experience versus a chatbot, and one of the things that came clear was people don't even know what to ask the chatbot. So I think when you're doing the DIY stuff, there's a danger. There's steps that people can take now to make that less likely to be damaging to their member. In terms of AI ourselves, we've been using AI avatars for over 4 years now, and credit to our design team, we've got really, really good at it, to the point that I had a meeting last week, and the person I sent an example video canvas to said, is that an AI presenter or is that a real person? So I said, well, you tell me. I won't name his name. I said, what, you know, tell me what you guess. He said, it's a real person, isn't it? And I was like, interesting. It isn't. They are that good now. We also use AI voice synthesis, and this gives us a massive advantage in terms of keeping things up to date, because we used to employ actors. I mean, it's sad in some ways, but it's very, very slow. I mean, I had a colleague, we made a video about DB transfers, and we had to change something, and he couldn't speak when we tried to refilm him in the same place because it was so cold. And we always say, keep that tie, keep that shirt. So we've been actively using AI voice synthesis and avatars for several years now, and we have got really, really good at it. And it's interesting that in terms of research and feedback, people say it humanizes the experience, because we generally have someone to introduce the experience, tell them what it's about, what they're about to find out, why it's important. And then it continues to talk them through. And then we use various techniques to highlight the thing that's been talked about. So AI is really big for us. In terms of managing our business, it's also an important, it plays an important role. And for example, I don't really talk to much software now. I tend to do it via an AI tool and get that to talk to the software for me.
Wow.
I've got several brilliant colleagues, but I'll name check Aaron Coates, who's our Chief Product Officer, who, when I took a bit of a break recently to celebrate a significant birthday, he kind of designed some specific AI tools to help me be, I was going to say help me be even better, but I'm not sure Aaron would quite express it in the same way. But yeah, I think it's great in terms of being able to do things really, really quickly. It also helps with granularity, so we can have an extraordinary amount of variation within a video canvas, to the point that we can have avatars speaking numbers now without being a data processor. Go figure if you want to try and work out how to do that. But it makes it so easy for, ultimately, what drives us is the member, and it makes it so easy for them. So we couldn't have done any of this without AI. Worth pointing out, though, we are not a data processor. There is no live AI on our product, because that would clearly introduce a security risk. So we don't do text to speech type stuff. We've done it in a far more innovative way than that.
it was interesting you both talking about that, actually getting that fear side of things, Ian, because I and Gareth, because I feel like I work for a provider, Broadstone, obviously. I worry it from both sides, really. I worry it from members using it, like you were saying, uploading statements and uploading letters that we send them into a large language model and saying, what do I do, or how should I feel about this, or what those sorts of things, or what does this say, or what are the actions, and whether what that response is, whether that's appropriate or right or healthy. So it's definitely a real concern for us. But also on the other side, my colleagues using AI to answer technical questions when there is a process internally where we do that. But sometimes needs must. People might think, well, I'll just quickly ask Copilot. It's just here on my desktop and it responds in 15 seconds. So that's quicker than Dave. So I'll do that, and that makes me very nervous as well.
And some of them are just outstanding and getting better. And in fact, one was introduced last week and withdrawn almost immediately because it was too good at doing something bad. You could probably read about that in the paper, but yeah, they are getting frighteningly good. So yeah, the provider is Anthropic, if you want to check out that story. But essentially, they introduced a new AI tool and withdrew it within days.
So what you were saying, Ian, I think, is that it's going to make things very, very convenient for the short while we have left on Earth before all obliterated.
Yeah.
I for one welcome our overlords. To be honest, I'm
yeah. I don't know if you know that. Well, I call it AI's wager, but I always say please when I'm using it, so it remembers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It remembers me favourably when the drone appears at my window, and yeah, no, I think it's a threat and an opportunity, but that's the sort of thing that humans have dealt with, through time, isn't it? But it does need very careful regulation, and there are some good signs around that, I think, as well. The fact that this tool was withdrawn, and it'll come back again, but it shows that there are guardrails in place, and I think cleverer people than me will need to think deeply and very hard about effective guardrails for technology, which, as Gareth says, has got the potential to create enormous harm, as well as make it easier to book an appointment with a doctor. There's so many exciting applications of it, not just pensions communications. Well, obviously that's the main one.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what Anthropic and all the rest of that. Did they just make the best pension console or something? No, we can't have it that good.
Yeah.
No.
I'm sure when Sam Altman gets out of bed on a morning, I bet pensions is probably the thing he's thinking about most. But
well up there. Yeah. Okay, your time is nearly up. I just wanted to get your closing reflections. Gareth, we'll come to you first. Just whether any thoughts on sort of direction as you see, what might develop in the next few years, and improving engagement with your clients and colleagues, and then brilliant the same to you, Ian. So yeah, Gareth, over to you. See what your thoughts are.
I mean, I don't think I'm going to surprise anyone by or impress anyone by suggesting that the next few years are going to be pretty busy in the legislation space, which, whilst it's going to be a lot of hard work, obviously I kind of have to welcome that, because it keeps Aries busy and keeps us relevant and important to our clients. So yeah, I think that's the next few years. In terms of what I'd like to achieve, or maybe something else that I might hope for from the next few years, is I think administration has gone through a bit of a journey, has become a bit more prominent, and it's getting a bit more of the flowers that it deserves. And I've just sort of just before this podcast record decided that I'd like to try and do the same thing for pensions technical. I think it's kind of an offshoot of administration, and is even more of a kind of a Cinderella area of the industry than even administration. So if in 5 years' time I say I work in pensions technical, I don't want to see the glazed eyeballs. I want to see, oh right, yeah. I know exactly where you're coming from. You're very valuable. We love the work you're doing. So that's what I want to see.
Let's get Gareth round for dinner. He works in pensions technical.
Said no one ever. Yeah.
Well, I've never used it as an opening line, so it hasn't worked for me yet.
we talked about visual. I've got this rather award that I'm very proud. It's the PMI Pinnacle Award,
Oh yeah.
which we won for impact on retirement planning excellence, alongside one of our favourite customers, Hayward Pension Technologies. I have to say one of our favourites, because otherwise the other customers will feel aggrieved. So hopefully winning more of these over the next few years. I think hyper-personalised communications should become the expectation, not the exception as they are now. And I think what I would like to see is the industry, grasping this now, because there are several other industries, particularly that younger people use, where the quality of communications is really high, and we don't need to be the exception. We have got secure ways of doing things in a really, really interesting way, and we have data that backs it up. So I just think the rollout of more of that kind of thing, and using AI securely, but to make communications even more granular and bespoke. So I talked about an example where we might have 5 personas in an experience. I mean, I don't want to make my studio colleagues' hair fall out, but that could be 100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a leap. Call it 20, 50. The more granular you go, the more likely it is that your communication will resonate with the individual who gets it. And so be that their age, their level of financial sophistication, their different pension arrangements. I think in the future as well, I'd like to see some sort of dashboard where you could see all your pensions in one place.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Oh yeah. Seems like easy enough. Shouldn't take too long.
I don't think that'd be very hard. So
and
I think you've launched that now, so it should be 2038, 2039 when we'll get that launched.
Yeah, I mean, what we've done already is built a dashboard video experience. If anybody wants to watch it, then give us a shout. I'll happily send it to them. But I think that's obviously going to change a lot about communications. I call it the 2 epochs of pension communication, BD and AD, before dashboard and after dashboard. And I think it's going to change the way that people have to think about pensions and how they communicate, because people are more likely to see their pension in the round rather than as an individual thing. And there's all kinds of dangers. People transfer into the largest pot, even though it might be so that should galvanize thinking. The common thread is, though, have an engaged membership and make sure they're informed. Don't make bad decisions. So use tools that actually work rather than what you always did.
Saying that, I think that we now, we're in a bit of a communications dark ages, and I think we didn't even realize we were. And then we went through the stage of realizing that people weren't reading the literature we were sending them. But it felt like it took a long time for us to get to where we are now, which is where we have, really good tools out there available to help people engage with their pension. And it's just a case of, making it happen and getting these tools in people's hands, which actually works well with the dark ages metaphor, actually. But we're using stone tools now.
Yeah, I think those almost like mantras or principles that all providers should sign up to, sort of do no harm type thing. We should be erring to do this, do right by the people, because they're going to have so much more access to information, almost like a democratization of pensions. It's just going to be all out there on the table for you all to see, nowhere to hide, just have it all there.
The PPI's guided retirement report is quite brilliant, I would say. I mean, it's not as good as the stuff that you do, Gareth, that I've seen of yours, obviously, not as erudite, but it is good. And, guided retirement, targeted support, there's all these there's all these ways that people can have a much better outcome, but they're all communication challenges, and they require, it's not just about creating new ways of new options for people. At the same time, you need to think about how are we going to tell them so they actually take advantage of these things in an informed way.
So targeted support and simplified advice, and this to guide retirement is a revolution to that, especially in the DC side, that ecosystem that's surrounding members and providers. I think that is hugely significant. Going to what Gareth's saying, about the level of change coming along in that space. I work primarily in the DB space, but in that DC space, the level of change we're going to see over the fence is going to be unrecognizable. They've got the landscapers in, and it's going to be a whole new back garden I'll have over there. I went with the analogy. I stuck with it. I thought it was all right.
Yeah. I was going to say keep digging.
Well, I think then on that note, I'm going to do on that bombshell type ending, I think. But on that note, I think I have to draw this conversation to a close. So thank you, Gareth and Ian, for joining me today to talk a little bit different, a little bit about technology and communications. I think that's kind of the theme that ran through this, and how to communicate effectively with different audiences. But yeah, thank you both on behalf of the listener. And listener, we'll see you on the next episode of the broadcast. Thank you.